Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ASD School Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd at 6:02 p.m. We'll call ourselves to order. Present in the boardroom are members Holloman, Lessons, Wilson, Jacobs, Donley, and Higgins. Present online is President Bellamy. In addition to ASD administration and support staff, We have conducted our roll call, so we'll be engaging in our flag salute and land acknowledgement via Mr. Pack. Please lead us, sir.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We acknowledge that we gather here today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina people of the Upper Cook Inlet. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina people have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. ASD is committed to diversity and inclusion, and it is with honor and respect that we recognize all Indigenous people who live and learn in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. We want to welcome you to our meeting and thank you for attending, supporting the work of the Anchorage School District School Board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, and school business partners in our entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars. With that said, item A3 is approval of the agenda. Would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Second, motion made by member Holloman, second by member Lessons. For board members, I just wanted to note that we did move an item to action items. That's F1, ASD Memorandum number 151, a resolution calling on the State Board of Education, as we have individuals from the public who wish to testify on this item. With that said, is there any objection to adopting our agenda as written? Hearing and seeing none, we have an agenda. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item B1, reports. Student Representative, Mr. Pack, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Jacobs. Well, it's Student Leadership Week, or National Student Leadership Week this week. So in honor of that, I would like to go over some highlights that we had over the Student Advisory Board meetings throughout this year. Inclusively, we had the Diamond Student Government and Eagle River High School Student Government win the National Guild Council of Excellence. So congratulations to them. In our past SAB board meeting, which was just last week, we passed two constitutional bylaw amendments. One, which increased the size and structure because sixth graders are now being a part of middle schoolers. So we passed that. Each high school should have a maximum of 4 delegates instead of 3. At each middle school, delegates are increased to 3 from 2. And we also just included our senior advisory board to include 6th grade as a part of our structure. And we also went over a resolution, which I was submitted to the board. It was regarding the South Anchorage High School Student Government, and it was titled Support of South Anchorage High School Student Government Remaining in Class During the School Day, and it was passed unanimously. I believe we have some students testifying on that today. The Municipality of Anchorage Youth Assembly Representative position is open, and the application is due until April 30th. So for students who qualify for that, please apply. Our ASOG, so Alaska Association of Student Governments Conference, occurred the last weekend, April 18th to 21. We have 3 ASD schools, Eagle River High School, Polaris K-12, and Frontier Charter Schools, well representing our peers there. We talked about resolutions, including mental health, education funding bills, and I believe that we had great representation from ASD. And finally, our student advisory board times are changing for those who are part of it next year. We're moving our AM meetings from 8:15 instead to now 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And our PM meetings will be 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And the first SAB meeting of next school year will be September 10th, 2024. So From now on till next school year, I'll just be taking notes of these board meetings and we'll give a summary to the students of the Student Advisory Board on September 10th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Do we have questions for our student representative? Hearing seeing none. Member Donnelly.
What's the location of the meeting?
Good question. They occur right here in the district boardroom.
Seeing no other questions for our student representative, thank you, Mr. Pack. We will move on to our next item, B2, military report. I believe we have Colonel Eric Dunn with us tonight. Welcome, Colonel. Thank you for being here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here tonight. Thank you for having us over. We'll just update you on a couple of items. The first one is just like as we get into the late spring, summer season, our military, or a lot of our military are doing permanent changes, station moves. We try to get as many of them done in the summertime as possible, but there's always quite a few that happen that tend to have to leave Alaska early, or in the fall, they come in a little bit late. And so we really appreciate the schools being understanding of that. They've always have been. I've never heard a complaint, and our students have been well taken care of no matter when they're leaving throughout the year. So just a huge thanks for that, and just making sure the schools know that you're going to have a little bit of that as we get into late May and into, or late April into May. Also, just a thanks to the communications department for Anchorage School District. They've been very helpful with getting information of all the different changes happening next year with sixth graders moving up to middle school, the Academies of Anchorage initiative. They've been very helpful with our school liaisons and our public affairs with getting information to us so that we could push it out to the military families that are coming. We have people coming from all around not only the United States, but across the world. So lots of different school districts, lots of different ways of doing business. And you all are awesome at getting the information out there and helping us do the same with our military families. Also, a big thank you to Tom Finisef and the capital planning team. The continued efforts with Ursa Major Elementary School and that project that's going to be going forward. We really look forward to that. You know, it's going to be a few years, but we can't wait for it. And a thank you to the other 3 elementary schools on J-Bear, because they've absorbed that student load. And I've watched it over the last couple of years that I've been here, and they've done a great job with that. And so we appreciate not only the schools, but everything to the transportation with the busing, to help getting kids to schools that are a little bit farther away than normal. We really appreciate that. That's been a huge success from our viewpoint, at least. And then the last thing, this is a really, really early announcement, but it's a big event. We have our Arctic Thunder Open House and Air Show on J-Bear, the 20th and 21st of July. That's a Saturday and Sunday. We'll continue to push that information out there, and you'll start to see on our public affairs and Facebook and our website information on it. But that is an awesome event to go to if you've never been to one. Lots of different aircraft. We also have lots of Army events there. It's just a fabulous event, and the base is open to the public. And so all the normal hoops you have to go through to get on the base, that goes away for a weekend, and we open things up. So we'll announce that again as we get closer, but thought I'd put the feelers out there and make sure you know about it. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Colonel Dunn. Questions for our military report? We'll go to Member Lessons, then Member Holloman.
Hi, thank you for being here. Hopefully this isn't too out of left field, but a couple weeks ago I was looking into demand at the schools across the school district and saw what I thought was a pretty robust demand that maybe is not met, and maybe it's a product of the school being closed. But it looks like there are a number of families who would like to get their students into a school on the base. And I'm just wondering whether your sense is these are military members who are, they're living off base, but they're of course working on base, or are they contractors? Can you shed some insight into, what the unmet demand is for students to enroll in one of the schools on base?
So I know we have a lot of military members that do want to have their kids go to school on base. Adele, do you know, you have a sense of the unmet demand, like just from you and Holly and your interactions? Yeah, and we're gonna, I mean, we anticipate growing over the years to come. Now, I think by the time that would become an issue, that Ursa Major would be there and that'll accommodate that. But that's something we're watching pretty closely, how quickly we grow in comparison to the schools on base. But I think based on timing, we should be good, but we'll keep watching that.
Thank you, Colonel. Just for our record, I just want to note that Adele indicated that a few dozen families were potentially waiting just because she wasn't at the mic. So thank you for that. Member Lessons, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. This is maybe a question for you or our team. Do we have an estimated completion date for the rebuild of Ursa Major?
I think we have, sorry, Adele, I'm looking back at you. I know that there's an estimate based on the timeline that they have. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think we can get that to you. That's easy.
Yeah, it'll through the chair, it'll be 25, 26
Okay.
timeframe.
Yeah, that jives with what I've heard.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Member Holloman. Thought I saw your hand earlier. No question. Oh, perfect. Okay. Any other questions on our military? Hearing seen. What?
Mr. Chair,
Yep. Madam President, your floor is yours.
just a point for relative to Member Lessons' question. Mr. Anderson will be able to give the board an update on that process relative to the new school and how we're progressing on that. But thank you, Colonel. Good to see you.
Thanks, ma'am.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Colonel, for being here tonight.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
That concludes our reports. We'll transition to C1, College Career Life Ready, Cumulative Grade Point Average, grades 9 through 12, Outcome Monitoring. Read our script to start our conversation. We're not going to have our monitoring conversation on the report that was given to us at our last meeting. Tonight's monitoring conversation will focus on Goal 3 and Interim Goal 3.3, College Career and Life Readiness. The percent of our students in grades 9 through 12 with a cumulative grade point average or GPA of 2.7 or higher will increase from 55.94% in June of 23 to 70% by June of 28. And interim goal 3.3, grade point average GPA. First, I want to confirm that all four components of the monitoring report are present. The report clearly shows the following. Number one, what is being monitored and focused on in a specific goal and interim goal. Data for the 3 previous reporting periods, the current reporting period and the target reporting periods, the superintendent's evaluation of performance, and number 4, supporting documentation that evidences the superintendent's evaluation via the tables provided and indicates next steps. With all the components present, we're ready to begin our conversation tonight, so we can start our who, what, why questions. I will start at the right side of the dais and go left. So Member Holloman, any questions to start us off tonight? Hearing none. Member Lessons, any questions?
Yes, but they don't fit the rubric.
Consider the rubric bent for just a minute. Okay. Feel free to proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. So one of the questions that I had was really about the handoff between middle school and high school. You know, this is a report about high school students with low GPAs in starting ninth grade, but students have records that precede high school. So how are students in middle school with low GPAs flagged? And what does that handoff look like?
I'll get us started. Great question. Board Member Lessons, thank you. The first thing I'd like to point out, which you're all aware of, is that the GPA metric as an interim goal is new to the district. So part of the job henceforth is for district leadership to communicate to our principals, to our teachers, counselors, support staff, the significance of the metric, why it matters. I would also add that specific to your question, the handoff of 8th to 9th grade is a point of emphasis, which falls in line with the Academies of Anchorage work we're doing. I think the work going forward will be much more deliberate. That's part of the Academy's work, to create a strong bridge between 8th and 9th grade with the recognition that 9th grade is a critical year. The success of 9th grade, as we've discussed in this forum, the on track toward graduation success is another metric we're paying close attention to. So a lot of work is going into that transition. At our last board meeting, we talked about that freshman day that's going to begin the school year. That's one example of the work we're doing to support 8th graders coming into 9th grade. Chris Opitz and his team in data and assessment have built the new Unified Insights tool, which includes specific platforms to this metric. For example, we can identify any student group by demographic, grade level, gender, what have you. Those students who are performing at 2.7 and above or below. We actually have it correlated with attendance as well. Those two metrics together are the most important metrics in determining post-secondary readiness. So a lot of work is going into this.
Follow-up member lessons?
So I feel like this is, I wrote a lot to kind of get to a question, and I feel like it's a question that I ask a lot. And so would increased funding at our schools with highest concentrations of poverty, or our schools with, biggest troubles with attendance, increase our students' outcomes? We've heard a couple of reports, one about migrant ed being able to leverage staffing to help transform some of the students' outcomes. Conversely, ELL has said that it's been stretched thin as a result of flat funding. And what I feel like I just heard, you guys say is that we have some new tools, but I feel like at the end of the day, we need people to make a difference in a child's life. So that gets me back to looking into the future. I mean, does improving our students' outcome depend on increased funding? Can we do this with the status quo?
I think in a word, additional funding is going to help a great deal. And I know my colleagues are going to have more to say than I do, but we know that, well, you ask a lot of great questions about the correlation between grade point, average achievement, and socioeconomic disadvantage. And there's actually a 30 percentage point difference between the two. We looked that up. We're going to provide that to you. But essentially, non-EDS students are performing at about 70%. They've hit the benchmark that we set as a district, which is exciting to note. We've got a big cohort of kids already meeting the metric. But students who are economically disadvantaged are about 41, 42%. That's really significant and important. And supporting students who come from a disadvantaged background, relationships, positive adult relationships in the school building matter a great deal. Proximity and support from adults matters a great deal. So even with additional funding that could support additional addenda time for teachers, and we're learning this through the work we're doing for credit recovery, providing students extra time and extra adult support to pass their classes is making a big difference. The same, I'm sure, is true for academic achievement. We've seen metrics related to co-teaching. That's another great example. When we have two certificated teachers in a classroom, our students are performing better, significantly better. That is resource intensive. Yeah. And I'll hand off to my colleagues. I'm sure they have other thoughts.
I thank you for the question. I would concur on really everything that Mr. Backman said. And really when we're looking at these metrics, you have your core instruction within your classroom, but I think what you're getting at is, you hit a certain threshold where the need is at such a level, it becomes more difficult. And so, of course, having more resources for targeted populations, I mean, it can't hurt. And, we have, for example, we work with a couple of different schools where they're doing reach out with students. There's a research-based method when you see a student who might be falling off track called check and connect. It's just a fancy word for check in, what's happening, how are you doing, what support can I have? It's relational, but then it's also based on what's what the hurdle might actually be in terms of academics, or it might be attendance, or it might be a health issue, whatever the case may be. Part of that investigation really indicates to a student and a family that we notice, we care, and we're here to provide support. And of course, as the level of need rises in terms of just the sheer quantity, it becomes more challenging.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Member Wilson, any questions at this time? Thank you. I'll jump in, and we touched on absenteeism, and I know that previously we've touched on the association between economically disadvantaged students and chronic absenteeism. I was just thinking through, do you think that looking at adding the lens of chronic absenteeism related to this data would add value and would tell us something the current presentation doesn't? And have we thought about adding, a demographic group for chronic absentee students to look at along with economically disadvantaged students? Thank
you. That's a great question. It's something we can definitely consider in more depth. It's a one of the tricky parts is the correlative versus causation, right? So how do we know if this is a directly contributing factor? Because we do have students really that are high performing that do struggle with attendance, but in general, we know that being in school matters. So that's definitely something that we could investigate further. What I would say is internally, we do look at those metrics very closely because we really get down to an at student level. And as Mr. Backman alluded to, we have systems in place where at a click of a button, teachers can know who in their classroom is struggling with a grade point average. That's just an entry point. The attendance is at their fingertips. We also track whether or not in their current progress grades, are they currently achieving at failing a course? In other words, F's in real time, while there is still time to intervene and provide support. And so that's a long answer, but it's a great question that we could investigate further. And we do look at that internally.
Thank you. Member Donnelly, any questions?
Thank you. Are you proposing that the goal listed here be the only goal for CCL college career life ready?
I can go ahead.
I would just say, no, this is just one of our interim goals for College Career Life Ready. There are other interim goals that we'll report on throughout the year on our calendar.
So this is just a new goal of multiple goals?
Yes.
Right. And what are the other goals that we have in place right now?
Yeah, great question, if I may. Yep. Yeah, Board Member Donnelly. Yeah, so we have 3 interim goals related to College Career Life Ready. One of them is the on track for graduation metric, which we're measuring grades 9, 10, and 11. That's just charting credit completion toward graduation. It's our most accurate metric toward graduation. Of course, we have GPA, and then the other one is the CTE pathway completion or completer, which is 2 or more years in a CTE pathway.
So when we worked hard to get this into place as one of our top 3 priorities, we had a vision of more down-to-earth goals also, one of which was personal finance, which was specifically here as a goal and now has been achieved because it's been rolled into the graduation requirements. So that's disappeared now from here, but it's in the graduation requirements, so still be. I would like to see more practical goals involved here in relation to life readiness. Things like first aid, well baby care, being able to swim if you fall in a lake and you don't drown. Those kind of practical life skills I would like to see enumerated more in this, just as we did with personal finance, and then we succeeded with that. So we now have 2 of the 3 goals related to graduation, which is very traditional, and I support, making sure graduation because it has a relationship to both college and career and life readiness, all 3 of those. But now 2 out of the 3 are related to graduation rather than more practical things, which I would really like to see put in here because the lack of specificity makes it more difficult to achieve those kind of things.
If I may chime in through the chair, Member Donnelly, that's a great question. It's a discussion that we've had at our board retreats where we have explicitly talked about various goals. And I do want to underscore in the student outcomes focused governance framework that the goals are owned by the school board. And certainly if there were an interest by multiple board members, we could always go through that process. But this is the process that's reflective of the last retreat where we finalized or at least set a framework for our reading, math, and CCL goals. And when the board expressed that this would be the appropriate goal for CCL, the administration took your feedback and then created 3 interim goals that we felt aligned to that goal. And specifically, GPA was chosen because of research that supports GPA as a predictor of post-secondary success. So that's the rationale for why the goals that exist are there. But again, we welcome feedback from the board as we go into our next retreat, where I hope that we'll formally adopt our goals.
Well, the superintendent will remember that I did give that exact same feedback at that retreat. So this is not the first time I've raised this. I raised it at the retreat, almost identical to what I just did. I think there's other types of things too that we should be making sure that our students have those skills that could be essential in their lives, whether that are not necessarily career or college related, that could save their lives or the lives of other citizens at some point if they had those skills.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. I realized I skipped over our student representative, Mr. Pack. Do you have any questions in the presentation?
Just a simple question, first of all. When we refer to the metrics here as cumulative GPA, are we referring to non-weighted or weighted?
Yeah, great question. Board Member Pack. Yeah, non-weighted. And that's typical of using GPA as the research-based metric for post-secondary readiness.
You have a follow-up, Mr. Peck?
It's kind of unrelated to my first question, but I was wondering if there was any breakup in the data of seeing whether the GPAs in our core instructional classes like science, math, and reading are being seen compared to elective credits and such.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It represents all grades that are posted in queue towards the student record.
Member Higgins, any questions at this point? President Bellamy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a couple of comments. I did send in a question regarding the work we did with the First Alaskans Institute, I think it was last August. And that question really was about, what does a 2.7 really mean? I mean, have we engaged in systemic conversations about, at that meeting, first of all, grading was identified as a focus area. And so we broke out into groups, and in those groups, we really looked at each of the focus areas. Grading was not the only one, but we looked at each of them relative to 4 questions. What is the status quo when it comes to grading? What is possible? What is missing? And how will we commit to kind of keeping the conversation going? So the group that was reporting on the grading identified grading as an adult-driven practice with of course, with expectations that impact students and families. But grading mostly exists to satisfy adults' needs. And I understand that that is a different way of looking at the whole grading picture. But I have two questions. Has the district engaged in any systemic conversations with teachers and administrators on grading? So really, what does a 2.7 mean across all ASD courses? And if we haven't, do we plan to do so? My second question is there a standard district grading criteria and practice? I appreciate Mr. Pack's question. Are we talking weighted grades? Are we talking unweighted grades? But what defines what a GPA of 2.7 really is? So those are my wonderings. And if we can't get to them now, I mean, we can have a future conversation on them. But until we define across our district, you know, what is a 2.7? I mean, what does it mean in terms of what teachers are considering when they give the grade? Or is it just it's just a grading conversation that we have not had? I'm hoping that the administration has had some, but I think our commitment to First Alaskans at the end of our meeting is that we would keep that conversation going. And, you know, I'm really wondering if we have done that.
Through the chair, Madam President, that's an excellent question. And a couple of things that was a wonderful professional development that we attended, but from First Alaskans Institute back in August. That was actually prior to us formally adopting GPA as one of our interim goal metrics. So now I think is the perfect time for us to really double down on those conversations to ensure that GPA is an appropriate proxy for what students know and are able to do. That's really the intent here. And there are steps that we can take as a board and administration to do that. For example, there are examples across districts and other states where boards can adopt policies that ensure that students are able to, perform, let's say, in standards-based grading, for example, where you can look at a transcript or a progress report and be able to understand specific objectives in areas that students are able to master. And there are even policies that we could adopt potentially that will allow students that opportunity to demonstrate that mastery if they don't on the first go around. Those are just very high level examples of effective policies that could meet, I think, the aspiration of this goal. That's a long-winded way of sharing that we're just beginning this work. We wanted to carefully listen to the board to understand where we want to set the new goals and guardrails. Now that we did the bulk of that work in December and we're slated to formally adopt our finalized goals going into this summer, this is the time where I'm asking the administration to talk to teachers and others so that we can create those adjustments as needed. Excellent question. I'll let the team add to that.
I could add just a couple of things and then pass it off to my colleagues. I would also add to that grading is a conversation that's ongoing during our PLC work, particularly at the secondary level. That there are many PLC groups working across our district right now on equitable grading practices and having those professional conversations. As the superintendent indicated, though, I think that more of those conversations are needed. And now that we are headed in this direction to adopt this as an interim goal, that we'll get more laser focused on it as well. So,
thank you. Follow up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, President Bellamy, I asked Stephanie Alexander, who leads our PLC initiative at the high school level, to provide some backdrop as to the work that's currently happening around grading practice. And we have 4 different schools right now working on grading practice, specifically equity of grading practice. The prior year, South High School, a number of representatives are in the House tonight. They engaged in a pilot program focused on equity grading. I've also learned, and this is prior to my tenure in the district, but there was a work group, district-wide work group, focused on grading practices pre-COVID. So your question is a timely one. And I think with the selection of this metric and really the elevation of GPA as one that we're focused on, it is a great time to re-engage in that work in a more systematic way. The last thing I want to add, we just recently had a really terrific meeting, consultation meeting with our tribal partners. And at that meeting, grading and grading practice came up as a topic of interest. So our community partners are interested as well. So we're going to pursue it with a lot of focus. Thank you.
Madam President, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you so much. That really is really encouraging that that there are some things that are happening. I just want to respond to just to follow up with the member Donnelly's question regarding the interim goals. And you are absolutely correct, Member Donnelly. You did bring it up in our January retreat. Our goals belong to the board. Our interim goals belong to the superintendent. And while you did bring them up, I don't know that there was a majority of the board that wanted to continue with those other items. Not that they're not important, but we have to focus on those. We can't do everything all at once. Our next opportunity, and I say all that to just remind the board that our next opportunity to discuss our goals will be at our retreat, which will be in June 14th and 15th. We will not only set the targets for the goals that we have already refined or revised, we will have further discussions. So we'll have time to discuss, those whatever board members are interested in, whether it's first aid, well baby care, swim, whatever those things are. So I just wanted to make sure the board is aware and make sure you have that June 14th and 15th on your calendars. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam President, we've gone through one rotation, so we'll start over. Any other members wish to ask a second round of questions? Member Lessons.
This would save me pulling an item from our consent agenda later, but I feel like it's relevant. So the district pending board action, this meeting is poised to adopt a portrait of a graduate, which is beautiful, aspirational in many ways. How do the components of the portrait of a graduate play with how do they align with a college career life ready goal? Are they going to be measured in the same way that these things are measured? Does our college career, I'm looking at the television, does the college career life ready goal rise above the portrait of a graduate? I sort of assume that the portrait of a graduate gives us a direction to shape day-to-day coursework and the skills that are embedded within Algebra 2. Help me understand how these two things intersect, please.
Sure, I think that's a great question, Member Lessons. So I can start, and if anyone wants to chime in, feel free to. So the portrait of the graduate is really about that aspirational goal of what we want to see kids embody beyond graduation requirements. So the graduation requirements paired with the portrait of the graduate are developed in a district to show kind of the whole picture of a student when they leave us. So not only do we want them to have those academic skills outlined in the graduation requirements that are based off of standards of courses that they're taking and grades, as we've talked about, and GPA, all of those things are still very important. But a transcript that lists your GPA and your grades doesn't tell the whole picture of a student when they graduate from us. There are many things and competencies that our students have leaving us that can't be documented through a transcript process and a course grade and meeting a course standard. And so the portrait of the graduate really kind of fills in that other aspect of the student. And so very similar to our elementary report card, there's a part of our report card that lists the subjects with grades, and then there's those SEL and social competencies that are also listed on the elementary report card. The portrait of the graduate is the start for developing that for our students at the secondary level. And so as we progress through our work as a district, through the academies and our CCL goal and the portrait of a graduate, those are conversations we can have about, do we want to measure those soft skills or employability skills? Or do we want them to just be aspirational? We have a lot of opportunity to grow there once we move through the approval process of the portrait of graduate.
Any follow-up, Member Lessons?
I mean, I guess there's a lot more work to do. But what I feel like I just heard you say is that there's a potential for the portrait of a graduate skills, the soft skills that are embodied within it to appear on a student's transcript.
That could be a direction we
In the
go.
future.
Yeah, that could be a direction we go. That's a decision point that we would have to make. For example, we have social emotional learning standards that are relevant for every grade level, and many of the skills that you see in the portrait of a graduate are reflected in those standards. So we do have those standards for our secondary students. So we could measure them as competencies, but that's not a decision point we've gotten to yet since we've just developed the portrait.
Last follow-up?
Thanks. Okay, going back to where we are right now. I think one of the questions that I had was, what do we know about our students this year? Right now, this is data from last year. We have new tracking tools. Do we have a glimpse through the third quarter at this point in time for how our students are doing this year? Can you just give us an overview, possibly?
Sure. Thank you for the question. When we look at the grade point average, it's really updated most often at semester, simply because that's when most grades are posted. There are some outliers. And so we are about right around 56%. So it's pretty similar to the last year. But of course, the preponderance of grades with the second semester and end of year have not been posted. And so, there's some very small adjustments, in the various subgroups that you see that I'm not going to go over here, but we're fairly similar as of now compared to the end of last school year.
Thank you, Member Lessons. I see President Bellamy has her hand raised.
I do. Thank you. I do appreciate Member Lessons' question regarding the portrait of a graduate. That particular document, which we did have a draft of in January at our retreat, when we were working very hard and focused on revising our goals. That document, for me, that document represents the values and vision of the Anchorage community. The community has spent months trying to figure out and give input into what is it that we want a graduate to know and be able to do. And so again, when we meet in June, and we've already used that portrait to help us revise our goals. And who knows, we might revise them again. But I do think that Member Lessons' question was on point. But I just want to remind all of us that, our goal is to really enhance and carry out and implement the vision and values of our community. And that portrait, I think, represents the vision and values of our community. So I don't have a question. It's just a comment. Thank you.
President Bellamy, other questions from the board on the report? Member Donnelly.
Regarding these 4 programs for equity and grading, of course, anytime I hear equity applied to an objective standard, I become concerned about the preservation of equality and meritocracy. So what are some of the strategies you're exploring for equity and grading that preserves their efficacy?
It's a great question. Thank you, Board Member Donnelly. Equity in grading practice is really a concept or a practice designed to meet students where they are when they enter the classroom. Some applications might include giving a student more time to complete an assignment. It might include differentiating instructional methods to make sure the student understands the concept and can meet proficiency. It might include recognition of language differences in the home language versus language at school, English. So taking that into account, making accommodations for that. Equity and grading
When you
practice.
say making an accommodation, what's an example of an accommodation?
Well, so if it's a second language learner, right? You might take extra time and focus on vocabulary to make sure the student understands vocabulary. I was just going to say that the standard of proficiency remains the same, right? But the method of instruction may differ. I think that's the general sense of it. Standards aren't being changed, proficiency levels aren't changed. It's the manner in which we address the learner to make sure that they understand and have an opportunity to show their understanding and mastery of content.
Thank you for the question. Member Donnelly, you have a follow-up?
Thank you.
Mr. Pack, did I see you had a follow-up question? Okay. Any other questions? Member Lessons?
Maybe it's a remark, sort of building off of that concept, proficiency being the same, but an approach differs. I think that this board is aware of what an adequacy study shows, right? When students are, if our high schools in Anchorage were funded not according to their size, for which we are, quite frankly, those kids are discriminated against. Yes, they're more efficient, but according to their need, right? If we have a high school with 75% of their students who are economically disadvantaged, and the data shows that, as on slide 5, 41% of those students are with GPAs of 2.7 or above. What would it look like for their outcomes if the approach to funding them was based on their level of need, based on the demonstrated need that they might have for co-teaching or for agenda? So I think that that an adequate approach is also an equitable approach.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Any other questions before we wrap up our goal monitoring session for the night? Hearing, seeing none. Dr. Bryan, team, thank you so much for presenting and fielding our questions.
Thank you all.
That concludes our goal monitoring session. We'll move on to D1, public comment and student comment. Welcome to the school board's first opportunity of the evening for public comment. The board has set aside 1 hour time slot at the beginning of our meeting for public comment. Public comments in excess of 1 hour will be heard the second opportunity for comment at the end of the meeting, where comments may always be submitted in writing. During public comment, board members will not answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is the public's time to speak and the board's time to listen. The board welcomes the public to observe and contribute to our meetings through their comments. However, to be productive, our meetings must be structured and civil. ASD conducts public meetings under Robert's Rules of Order, a set of rules for orderly meetings that have been used since the late 1800s. Those rules required the board and the public to be civil and respectful of each other's opinions and statements. There are a few requirements under Robert's Rules. Do not attack a member or speaker's motives. No profanity or foul language. Refrain from disturbing the meeting. No cheering, applause, outbursts, or waving of signs or posters. If you have hands out, please provide them to Miss America Sullivan, who's seated to my left. As the chair of this meeting, it is my duty to enforce these rules of civility and decorum. Any additional information can be found at the handout located at the door regarding audience participation and rules of our boardroom. With that said, we have a number of students signed up this evening. Our first student testifier is Zoe Fensel. Welcome. You have 3 minutes. Just stuff your mics on. Yep. So you have 3 minutes. Please begin when you're ready. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Zoe Fensel, and I'm a student at South Anchorage High School. Next year, I will be the student body president of our school. I feel very strongly about the coexistence of fun and high academic achievement in school. As a student, I also understand that recent budget cuts have been incredibly detrimental to students and the school community. Funding schools is becoming an even larger issue than it previously has been. South Anchorage High School has been having even larger issues due to the lack of FTE given to our school. Every other secondary school, including both middle and high schools, has received this additional funding with the exception of South. This cut to funding has been leading to massive issues within South with scheduling and offering all the important classes that both benefit students academically but also socially. Recently, student government has been slated to become a 0-hour or club, and this is an issue that not only concerns the students directly involved in student government, but the whole student body. Teachers, staff members, and ASD leadership consistently talks about inclusion and making sure that all students have the opportunity to have their voice heard. However, by making student government a 0-hour or a club, many students become excluded from participation in this class. Every student in student government is elected for their ability to fairly and accurately represent the student body. In our current class, we have a fairly diverse group of students representing different parts of our school. Students in our class play many roles in and out of the school, as well as in the community, which is part of the reason that we are each elected. It seems completely unreasonable to tell us we need to promote inclusion, but make student government a class that is not available to the majority of students that fairly and accurately represent our student body, which is the purpose of student government. Students who play competitive sports will be unable to participate due to the new morning practices. Students who can't afford to drive a car to 0-hour every day will be unable to participate, and underclassmen who do not have parents available to drive them every day will also be unable to participate. I personally am a competitive swimmer hoping to swim in college. I take this sport very seriously, but want to be able to contribute to creating a positive school environment next year as student body president at South. My swim practices next year will likely be in the morning, which would eliminate my ability to participate in both. Asking me to choose between two things I feel passionately about seems incredibly unfair and unreasonable. A class entirely dedicated to making our school and school district a better place, a class that aims to further the goals of this board, should be prioritized as a class during the school day. Please reconsider funding for our schools. South is a massive school that truly strives to create a positive environment. Due to our strong passion about this issue, we wrote a resolution that was passed in SAB last week and sent to the superintendent along with this board. Throughout tonight's testimonies, other South students will talk about their experiences and why we feel so strongly funding needs to be reconsidered. We truly appreciate all of your consideration on this and hope you'll hear us in these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Addison Bailey. Welcome, Addison. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Addison Bailey, and I am currently the sophomore class president at South Anchorage High School. I am here today not only as a student invested in my academics, but in competitive sports and my extracurricular activities. I experienced many of the same struggles as the other student athletes, not only at South, but in the Anchorage School District. Members of student government are often those who are deeply involved in the community, whether it's clubs, sports, or other activities. By changing student government to a club/0-hour, we exclude a significant portion of the student population who are unable to participate due to scheduling conflicts. With moving start times, the possibility of not only high school sports but club sports beginning before the school day cause further time constraints. According to the data from the National Federation of State High School Associations, high school athletes spend an average of 18.5 hours per week participating in their sport during the season. This is not including the time they spend on competitive sports and other clubs. It is clear to us as students that planning big events such as prom is too big of a time commitment without a period within the school day. Student athletes dedicate hours not only to their sport but to the school, and have to choose between the two is not fair, for not only the student but for their future. According to the NCAA Goals Study, over 90% of student athletes say college sports have helped them grow in personal responsibility, work ethic, teamwork, and goal setting. Another study done by the NCAA from 2020 revealed that former NCAA student athletes are more likely than other college graduates to be thriving in areas such as community, social, physical, and purpose. Another study done by the National Center for Education Statistics talks about extracurricular activities, stating that they provide a channel for reinforcing the lessons learned in the classroom, offering students the opportunity to apply academic skills in a real-world context. We believe that student government is an essential part of a well-rounded education. Recent research also suggests that participation in extracurricular activities may increase students' sense of engagement to their school and thereby decrease the likelihood of school failure and dropping out. With these facts and data, wouldn't it be better to allow students the opportunity to participate in both sports and electives such as student government? As a student whose dream is to one day play Division I soccer, I value an opportunity I am given to get into a top school while pursuing a major. Personally, student government and sports have been a pathway to personal growth, teamwork, and leadership. I am acutely aware of the challenges posed by the current system. Too often we are forced to prioritize one commitment over another, sacrificing opportunities for personal and collective growth in the process. By making student government a class within the school day, we provide a more inclusive environment where all students can participate fully. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Jada Morris. Welcome, Jada. You have 3 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
My name is Jada Morris from South High School, and I'd like to start off by acknowledging how much I value the genuine enjoyment of attending school on a daily basis. I've been able to achieve this by personalizing my schedule with different electives and courses based upon personal interest and potential career options to make my education feel positive and beneficial to me. With recent budget restrictions, many electives that my school offers have been put on the chopping block. Schools have begun to make the tough decision of prioritizing certain classes over others based on necessity, as they no longer have the resources or ability to continue all of them. This causes major issues within preparing children for their education beyond high school while also being detrimental to their experience within it. Myself, along with many other students in this room, have fallen victim to a series of events and are faced with the likely possibility that our student government class time cannot be kept within the school day and will therefore become less accessible to a large portion of the student body. This is a massive schedule conflict for all of those that feel passionate about student voice, which our student government class takes pride in representing. This class is often used as a catalyst that sparks interest in many fields regarding business and politics and serves as a great outlet for student leadership. To limit the impact of the class would be to limit the impact of student influence and representation within ASD. Not only is this issue dampening our voices, but it also harms every student that is not directly affiliated with the class. Chronic absenteeism has been a massive issue since the pandemic, and it has continued to raise alarm throughout our district. Student government is a class that plans numerous events and activities with the goal of contributing to overall student satisfaction and increasing engagement that causes students to want to go to school and participate in things that fulfill that increasingly important need for social interaction. To limit the influence of a highly socially motivated class and then expect to see improvement in areas like absenteeism and student satisfaction is counterintuitive. By making it impossible to manage with the current budget, keeping not only student government, but the classes students have chosen to take based upon their personal interests, the students' desire to attend school may be.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Carly Strumpler. Welcome, Carly. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Carly Strumpler. I'm a sophomore at South Anchorage High School, and as you may have heard from the speakers before me, I will be addressing a decision at our school that will negatively affect me as a student. The cause and effects of recent budget cuts have caused many classes to be cut that several students love, including student government for me and the other students in this class. I've been involved in student government since elementary school, and I've cherished it through my 2 years in high school so far. And with the issues we have faced trying to keep our student government a class in a regular school day, the student government and I are reaching out for a solution and help today. Student government is the biggest representation of student voice in our school building, and it feels that our school culture and it fuels our school culture and community. All of our events we organize and create excite kids to come to school and participate, which boosts attendance in our events and regular day-to-day school. Students must be involved and excited and maintain a sense of school pride to do that. Student government must remain a class so we have the proper planning time and participation to put on these events, which directly makes a difference for our student body. If it becomes a 0-hour class next year, it severely limits the number of people participating in the student government class. To have a significant impact on student voice and community, you need many students involved to do so. Additionally, we need the same participation in large-scale events. If class participation is low, due to the 0-hour schedule, it will diminish our school culture. Recovering from the effects of COVID, we now see the excitement for school back in classes. Over the past 4 years, In the aftermath of COVID, South has experienced a lack of attendance, school spirit, school pride, and school community, all leading back to our school culture that, until recently, has struggled. We are just now seeing some of that passion come back for the school in the younger grade levels. If student government gets moved to a 0 hour, it's going to severely limit students' abilities to continue to build this positive school culture, leading us back to a school environment where some kids are not interested in school. We understand the difficulties the board and administration have faced this year trying to resolve all of the issues with budget limitations, and no hard choices have to be considered. However, South is the only high school choosing to limit student government participation and student voice by moving the course to a 0 hour before school option, despite these challenges. Again, we ask for your help finding a positive solution. As I conclude my testimony tonight, I want to restate that I'm here as a student to plead for help finding a solution to keep my student government class that I love in the school day. Please help me keep the one class that drives me to go to school each day and allows me to connect to my high school in a meaningful way. Thank you for listening and for all of the work you do for the students in the Anchorage School District. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Mason Oni. Welcome, Mason. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mason Oni, and I proudly serve as a member of the Anchorage School District Student Advisory Board, but most importantly, AJ Diamond's Student Body President. Today, I address you not just as a representative of Diamond, but as a voice for fairness and equity across all of our high schools. I stand here to express Diamond's immense support for our friends at South Anchorage High School. And I know what you're thinking. Diamond supporting South is pretty wild, but if you guys pay attention to what I'm about to say, you'll understand why. At Diamond, we recognize the crucial role of student government as a class, not merely an extracurricular activity. With our recent shift at Diamond to a block schedule, we've experienced firsthand the struggle of balancing essential coursework within limited time frames. With the time we have now, we utilize every second of it. It gives the ability to dive deep on larger issues that affect the student body and school. Like South, Diamond is a part of the esteemed Big 8 institutions, and we understand the immense workload borne by our student leaders. If circumstances were reversed, Diamond would seek solidarity from our fellow schools without hesitation, and we know we'd get the same feedback from them. Transforming student government into a club or regulating it to a 0 hour status would undoubtedly dampen our spirit, unity, and enthusiasm. It would undermine the very essence of our vibrant learning communities, and I can promise you guys that it would lead to a loss of attendance, spirit, and excitement when walking onto campus. Members of the board, I implore you to consider the far-reaching consequences of this decision, not just for South, but for every student yearning for the quintessential high school experience. Let us ensure that every class, every student continues to thrive in an environment enriched by these invaluable educational opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Reed Davidson. Welcome, Reed. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Reed Davidson, and I'm the current student body president at South. If student government had been a 0 hour during my time in high school, I would not have been able to serve in my role. I live in Girdwood and rode the bus consistently during my earlier years in high school. Even now, while I have the privilege to drive most days, I cannot guarantee driving every day due to the Seward Highway being one of the most dangerous highways in Alaska, particularly in the winter. While I may be leaving, one of our most promising freshman applicants, a Girdwood resident, has shared that she will have to drop the class should it become a 0 hour. I hate to think that we are sacrificing hard workers and effective representation because they cannot safely or affordably drive to a class outside of school hours. Throughout tonight, we've heard arguments for the importance of student government remaining a class at our school. Zoe shared how a class entirely dedicated to bettering our school and school district should be prioritized as a class in order to allow highly involved representatives the ability to participate. Addison explained how forcing students to choose between student government and sports results in a worse representation of the school and is detrimental to the development of members of the class. Jada detailed how student government helps dampen the negative effects of problems that the school board is trying to curtail, such as chronic absenteeism, low enthusiasm for school, and limited social interaction. Carly shared how the event student government creates drives students to come to school and build support for school coming out of COVID. Finally, Mason affirmed the importance of having a student government class at a comparable school to South, emphasizing the district-wide support we received for our resolution passed at SAB. The board has discussed tonight college, career, and life readiness, and will later discuss the portrait of a graduate. Please keep in mind the role of student government in advancing these goals of the board. We drive participation and engagement in our school, creating a more engaged learner. We host events encouraging social skills and strong communication. We have numerous community service drives throughout the year, creating community-engaged students. We encourage students to come to school with our activities, increasing attendance, which has shown to be vital to the success of students. We create an opportunity for students to practice teamwork, collaboration, and social interaction at inclusive events like our Battle of School Spirit. I understand that you are faced with a massive challenge of allocating a small amount of funds to many worthwhile parts of our education. We are also advocating for increased funding on the state level to resolve this issue. On this level, I simply ask that you consider increasing our funding, specifically in FTE, to support our program. If you are here to support South student government, please raise your hand now. Our student voice and work to improve our school matters to us and our school students. If student voice truly matters in the school district, please support us via an increase in funding. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes our student testimony. Thank you very much for being here tonight. We have a couple community speakers on non-action items. We'll proceed with those now. Our first speaker is William Baxter. William Baxter doesn't appear to be here. Next up is Thomas Ide. Welcome, Thomas. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready. One more time. It is.
Good to go now. Hello, my name is Thomas Ide. I'm an ASD father. Dear members of the Anchorage School Board, I am deeply concerned about the lack of action on critical issues within our school. Despite repeated calls for action, it is evident that the board has not done enough to address pressing issues such as bullying, violence, and the inappropriate influence of teachers on students regarding non-educational matters. Bullying and violence in our schools continue to be a significant challenge that affects the safety and well-being of our students. Yet there has been a failure to implement effective policies and procedures to prevent and address these issues. Students are suffering from physical, mental, and emotional harm, and their cries for help are too often ignored or dismissed. Furthermore, there have been disturbing reports of teachers using their positions to influence students on non-educational issues such as politics or social issues. This gross negligence undermines the trust and integrity of our educational system and violates the principles that teachers should remain neutral and focus on academic instruction. It is a duty of the board to ensure a safe and supportive learning environment for all students. This includes taking proactive measures to prevent bullying and violence, as well as ensuring that teachers maintain professionalism and focus on their educational responsibilities. Therefore, I urge the board to take immediate and decisive action on these issues. This includes implementing comprehensive anti-bullying and violence prevention programs, providing training and support for staff, and enforcing policies that prohibit teachers from using their positions to influence students on non-educational matters. Our students deserve better. They deserve to attend schools where they feel safe, respected, and supported in their academic growth. It is time for the board to prioritize the well-being of our students and take meaningful action to address these critical issues. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, a concerned father. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Gabby Ide.
Good evening. I'm Gabby Ide, co-founder of the Anchorage chapter of Moms for Liberty and its current chair. Let me introduce you to what that is and why we're here. Moms for Liberty is a parent-led, nonpartisan grassroots organization with over 300 chapters in 48 states, mobilizing 300,000 members and growing. 130,000 are moms and dads. Over half of our members are grandparents, uncles, aunts, teachers, and community members. Our aim is to unify, educate, and empower parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. We take a stand for our children as joyful warriors against opposition with smiles on our faces so that our kids and all children in our community have a clear example of how to conduct themselves. Moms for Liberty has 3 chapters in Alaska, Matsu, Anchorage, and Fairbanks. Locally, our mission is to hold school boards accountable for decisions affecting our children. For a long time, the line between parental authority and school institutions have been blurred. Moms for Liberty is here to clear that up. Our parental and constitutional rights do not end at the classroom door. Our responsibility as parents is to be fully informed, involved, and engaged in our kids' education and environment at school. It is also our responsibility to guide the character building of our children through the installation of our family values, virtues, and morals. The school district's responsibility is to provide a quality education focused on nurturing each child's capabilities and achievements in preparation for adulthood. It is not the school district's responsibility to promote one political ideology over another, enforce a particular worldview, boost political or activist groups, or drive life-altering decisions on students. In the past, we trusted school districts to do the job they were assigned in an ethical and legal manner. But especially in Anchorage, this trust has been broken, and not one of us can stand for that. That's why when the majority of this board didn't have the back of one of the best teachers I've ever known, then dissolved the charter family partnership, I couldn't remain on the sidelines any longer. Zimmerman versus ASD is what happens when the district steps over kids to cater to chaos. Family Partnership Charter School was the longest running charter in the state. It was the most successful school in Anchorage and the largest, serving over 1,800 students with $6 million in reserves designated to go directly towards children's education, not building operations or administration. Then ASD took over. So we move forward more informed than ever. We request and research curriculum and review ASD policies and guidelines. We watch what's promoted and enforced on our children. We take corrective action with inappropriate, divisive, and politically motivated materials and policies that conflict with parental authority. We will always approach the school board with the respect for their position and a willingness to work together to rebuild mutual trust. We hope the school board members and
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Deilani Cardoza. Welcome, Deilani. You have 3 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Deilani Cardoza, a paraprofessional with ASD. Once again, I'm here to talk about the totem contract and the feelings and questions we have concerning what we're being offered. A $4 raise sounds great, and it's nice, but in reality, it barely puts our starting workers at or below the starting wages of other jobs. For those of us who have literally put our blood, sweat, and tears into this job for 8, 9, and 10 years or more, we're still making less than most people at other jobs who've been there 3 to 4 years. Weather closure days. While it's nice to be offered the ability to work from home, very nice, we want to know why the district seems to be refusing to let us take these days as time off without pay. We either find trainings to do online to work, we go dangerously to work, or we pay ourselves. Why are we not being allowed to simply take the day? Forcing us to make these choices is still punishing us for the bad weather. Finally, holidays. The only holidays we're guaranteed off and paid for are Christian holidays. Yeah, it's only 2, but it's still only one religion. Those of us employees who are of other religions, we have to request to take our holiday off 30 days in advance. It's a request. It can be denied. We are allowed to either take it without pay or pay ourselves. Not so bad, but we still have to request, and that's not okay. So, other than that, it's all the same. You guys have a good night.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Veronica Lambertson. Welcome. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Is it on? I'm Veronica Lambertson from Birch Creek, Alaska, and have been trying to research the budget and how it's projected. And I'm a business owner too, so I understand P&L and budget sheets. And there's my observation is that it could be a lot easier to understand 500 pages of a budget, and wondering when our school district will step up to the challenge of making it easy to read with all the numbers in it. So for instance, how charter schools and how the public program schools outside of ASD, you put the student totals in those schools. But when it comes to a public school budget and you're allocating how many students are in that school, do you? I can't find it. So I guess, yeah. So hopefully wanting to hear some feedback on that information, how to get involved in getting that clear on the budget.
Thank you for your testimony. I believe that concludes our community speakers to be heard on non-action items and our student testimony. The other 2 speakers are to be heard on action items. So that concludes our first hour of public comments. Yep, there are 2 other speakers, Aaron Kelly and David Boyle. They're going to be heard under action items regarding correspondence funding. Yep. Okay, so that concludes our first hour of public comments. We've moved on to E1 consent agenda, voting on consent agenda items. Before we entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda as drafted, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Member Lessons.
Yeah, I'd like to pull ASD memorandum number 127 and also number 132.
ASD memorandum number 127 will be action item F2. ASD memorandum number 132 will be action item F3. Any other board member wish to pull an item from our consent agenda? Hearing, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda as amended. So moved.
Second.
Made by member Holloman, seconded by member Wilson. Any objection? Hearing none, our consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to action items. F1 ASD memorandum number 151, resolution calling on the State Board of Education and Early Development to implement regulations providing for correspondence school programs. We would first entertain a motion to approve the memorandum and a second, and then we can begin our public testimony on this item.
Move to approve ASD memorandum 151, resolution calling on the State Board of Education and Early Development implement regulations providing for correspondence school programs.
Second.
Made by member Holloman, second by member Lessons. Prior to discussion, we have two community speakers to be heard related to this item. Our first speaker is Aaron Kelly. Welcome, Ms. Kelly. You have 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. Martin Luther King Jr., 1947. Good evening. I'm a proud mom of 4 little girls. My oldest 2 are in elementary at Family Partnership Correspondence School, and my next will be starting kindergarten in the fall. Even after 20 years flying combat missions in the Air Force and the Alaska Air National Guard, I had to gather my confidence to begin the most daunting task of all in the summer of 2020, to homeschool my oldest as she began kindergarten. My husband also serves in the Alaska Guard. He deploys often, and of course, the pandemic was raging all around us. In contrast, we desperately sought to provide our children a stable school experience and a safe environment to preserve their innocence a bit longer, and most of all, to instill an unquenchable desire for learning. We found Family Partnership, and we are so grateful for the support and guidance we've received there. My children are thriving. We savor our school days together at home, filled with Holling C. Holling, Dallaire, Shakespeare, nature study, astronomy, Greek mythology, the wind in the willows. I discovered my child is a whiz at math, but needs some extra help with reading. I soon realized I should step back from my military career, and yet the sacrifice of becoming a one-income family pales in comparison with the growth we see in our children through their delight in nature, hunger for books, empathy for others, and love for each other. We are grateful to live in this great state of Alaska, where our rights as parents to educate our children are upheld and supported. In addition to being a regular tax-paying family, we pour our money into the local economy for educational resources, a local nonprofit dance school for ballet, sports through local small businesses, and music and art through local private teachers. We spend thousands of our own dollars on individualized curriculum to meet our daughters' unique needs. We also plan and depend on an allotment from the state, and we respectfully ask that ASD honor the allotment program for this current school year so as not to devastate families like mine. The letter from Commissioner Bishop has given you a clear way forward to continue reimbursements and requisition, and yet ASD is the only district in the state who has chosen not to. The response I received today from the superintendent's office was encouraging, and I thank you. As they like to say in the rescue squadrons, find a way to yes. You know this is the right thing to do, so make it happen. Integrity, courage, and honor are highly valued in our family's little homeschool, and indeed, dare I say, the most important subject. We do not subscribe to conspiracy theories. We stay away from drama politics. Elected public servants and tax-funded officials, I implore you, this school board and district officials, as well as state legislators and judiciaries, to act in accordance with these virtues. If you don't fully understand the immense value and significance of Alaska's correspondence programs, I urge you to educate yourself. Do not allow power and money and pride to play a role in your actions and decisions in the days and weeks to come. Please place above all the best interests of our children. I believe in General George Marshall's wisdom. There is no limit to the good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. Thank you for your time and attention.
For your testimony. Our next speaker on this action item is David Will via telephone. Mr. Boyle, you have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready. Mr. Boyle, if you're online, you want to hit *6 to unmute. Not seeing Mr. Boyle is online. We have one caller, but it looks like that they're not unmuted. So we'll give one more 10-second period here. Mr. Boyle, if you're online, again, *6 to unmute. All right. With that said, that concludes our committee speakers to be heard on this action item. What the will of the board in terms of conversation? We've had a motion and a second to adopt this memorandum. Member Holloman is the mover of the motion. Would you like to speak to this at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
Yeah, I
follow
think
that.
you moved to approve the memorandum and the attached resolution.
Correct.
Yep. Would you like to speak to it as the mover at this point? Okay. Perhaps Dr. Bryant, can administration speak to the context of the resolution and what it asks the board to support doing publicly?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And pardon in advance, I'm going to repeat some of these comments during my remarks at the end of the meeting, but I want to walk the community through some pertinent timelines and things that have happened. So the first thing that occurred was on April 12th, when a Superior Court judge ruled that 2 Alaska statutes related to correspondence school allotments and individual learning plans are unconstitutional as written. As a result of that, there was a wide array of uncertainty and questions from the community, and ASD itself was surprised by the judgment. All of that to say, within days, ASD submitted what's called an amicus brief, which is essentially a letter of support that urges the court for a stay on the decision. And when I say a stay on the decision, I mean we're urging the court to pause action on that decision, because at the forefront of ASD's mind is to ensure that our families can quickly resume their correspondence studies. We want to pursue a path for families to quickly restart their or to quickly receive their reimbursements, but we can't do that without what's called a stay in the court's judgment on that ruling. So with that said, in addition to the amicus brief, which ASD submitted to the court last Wednesday, that's in addition to the plaintiffs submitting a formal request for stay, urging the court to pause the decision until the end of the fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. Since then, we also provided support to the school board to prepare a resolution that's being considered tonight, which urges the State Board of Education to pass regulations to allow for constitutional correspondence programs moving forward. Why are we doing this? We're tackling both short-term and long-term issues. In the short term, I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to ensure that the reimbursement program can resume. It can't resume until we receive a granted stay order from the court. Meanwhile, it's important that the school board carefully consider this resolution tonight, because it'll allow us to have a path towards longer term action. So say that this stay is only granted through the end of the fiscal year. We need to have a path to ensure continuity for our correspondence school families after June 30th. That's where the State Board of Education plays a role, because as a body, they're able to pass regulations that would allow correspondence programming to continue even in the absence of the statute that was struck down by the judge. With that said, in parallel, a conversation that'll be happening is an appeal that'll likely go to the Alaska Supreme Court. But I want to just succinctly state that tonight what the board is considering is a resolution urging for the state board to adopt those regulations that provides a path to continue our correspondence education as soon as possible, even if these statutes continue to be deliberated at the Supreme Court level. So with that said, the resolution is before the school board, and we welcome questions or comments.
Thank you. Dr. Bryant, just briefly, my understanding is Mr. Boyle is having technical challenges and attempting to dial in. Mr. Boyle, if you're online, just a reminder, *6 is unmute. Unless there's objection from the board, I'd like to circle back to see if Mr. Boyle solved his technical challenges. Mr. Boyle, are you with us?
This is Mr. Boyle. Can you hear me now?
I can. Welcome, sir. We're going to give you 3 minutes to provide your public comment on this action item. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. President Jacobs, board members, I'm David Boyle, testifying for myself. I want to address the correspondence program and the position the district has taken. The district has put on hold payments to parents. Why? Why have you put parents and students out in the cold? And why are you continuing to pay teachers, the staff, and other correspondence program operating costs? This makes absolutely no sense, both financially and legally. If you're afraid to pay parents due to the risk of violating the Alaska Constitution, then you should also not pay the operating expenses of the correspondence program. Money comes out of the same bucket. It would seem the district expenses are much more important than a family's expenses. Matter of fact, it seems that the district's expenses are more important than a correspondence student's learning. Commissioner Bishop told all superintendents that they could continue to make payments. It appears as if Anchorage is the only district to not pay parents, falling back on, quote, legal advice. The district truly believes that using so-called public funds to pay private educational organizations is unconstitutional Then I suggested consult legal advice regarding paying any educational organizations such as textbook companies, tutors, nonprofits, etc. I find it very interesting that the district is using public funds to pay private vendors directly, which is against the Constitution. Meanwhile, parents are unable to use their public funds indirectly to pay vendors, which is not against the Constitution. That's a very discrete difference. The district, the NEA Alaska, the appellant in the case, and the governor have all asked for a stay to the court's decision. That stay will probably be granted. With that known, the district has failed in its responsibility to provide, quote, an excellent education for all students. Maybe the district's trying to shut down the correspondence program so it can force the students back into brick and mortar schools and get even more state funding. I would hope not, because that strategy will fail miserably. Most correspondent parents will remove their kids from the district and enroll them into other correspondence programs. Parents defend their kids. Please remember that. You cannot have it both ways. Finally, the students should be the number one consideration in all your decisions. They are the customer. Also remember, you provide a service to these customers, parents and children. And these correspondence parents have other programs to choose from. Put yourself in the parent's position. What would you do? Would you stop paying for tutoring? Would you stop paying for music lessons? Would you stop paying for gymnastic classes? And what would you tell your child? If the district refuses to pay parents for the children's correspondence program, then I recommend the district remit the funding back to the state. I ask that you please reconsider your decision to withhold payments to parents for the correspondence program expenses. It's the right thing to do. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sorry about the technical glitches. And thanks again for letting me testify.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to resume board comments on this item. Is there a board member who wishes to address the resolution? Member Holloman, floor is yours.
Yeah, I do want to make clear to everybody that we're reacting to the court case and we're surprised at it as much as anybody. And I'll say, having watched the governor's press conference, having listened to the attorney general, and I say this, I'm not an attorney, but a lot of the things they said simply didn't make sense. My firm belief is that this case came about like it did because of the money that was being spent on private school tuition, and that allocations have been part of public school education in Alaska for decades and decades and decades. No one's ever raised a case, to my knowledge, and I don't think there was any question about it. But in the absence of a law that allows us to give allocations, we felt it prudent to stop. And I'm going to say that we were one of the districts, I think, was operating inside of the law before this case was decided, that correspondence programs in other boroughs were acting illegally. And we just have a frustrating responsibility to be within the law. That said, I do think that a stay will come quickly. And my expectation of the administration is that they will immediately resume the allocations and do everything they can to make the finish of the school year for our correspondence school students as smooth and predictable as possible under the circumstances. And then hopefully the legislature will straighten this out with the constitutional law that makes allocations clear and has it go that direction. So our pause is not in any way meant to harm correspondence school families. We very much want that program to work and work right and be predictable. But at the moment, we don't think there's a basis in law for allocations to families. And I will say that as that's my interpretation, not necessarily the boards or the administrations, but that was how I read the outcome of all these decisions. And I think it will work its way around quickly. The Constitution of Alaska is really explicit about certain things that we should not spend money on. And I think that was deliberately clouded by some people, and it was stopped by the court. For the moment, I think legitimately any school would pause what they're doing until there's clear guidance. But of course, obviously other districts have done something different. But I do want to say, I think other members of the board also want to see the allocations to families resumed. And from now through the end of the school year, things to be as seamless as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Holman. I'll jump in with just a couple comments. The board with this memorandum is going to effectively advocate for one of the three possible responses to Judge Siemens' ruling, which is a resolution calling for the state board to implement emergency regulations. They have authority under state law to do so and probably implement the quickest fix to reinstate legal expenditures towards reimbursement of allotment funds. There are two other options, of course. The stay has been requested, and ASD signed on with an amicus brief requesting the temporary stay to provide families some certainty through the end of the fiscal year. And then in addition, I know our board will be advocating for a return to what Judge Zeman appears to have indicated is lawful and constitutional expenditures through allotment programs which don't benefit private or religious institutions. So I think we're doing what we can to advocate, and this is one item of the three that the board will be speaking on tonight, which is I think a testament to the district's commitment to correspondence programs and the families who are doing their best to increase parental involvement and engagement to benefit students that might otherwise be privately homeschooled. With that said, I support this memorandum and appreciate the administration's partnership in drafting it. Are there other comments from the board?
Mr. Chair.
We'll go to Member Lessons, Member Donnelly, then President Bellamy.
Thank you. I wanted to begin by expressing my gratitude for the administration having posted a couple of supplemental documents to the resolution, specifically the amicus brief itself, as well as the motion for leave to file the amicus. And I am not a lawyer by trade, and I learned through this process that we actually have to essentially ask permission from all parties in order for the amicus to be effectively lodged within the docket itself, for it to be part of the public record. But for the moment, it is here in our board docs accompanying this resolution so that members of the community can read it and understand more of ASD's thoughts. So I appreciate that addition. I wanted to share a conversation that I had. I was at the Science of Reading conference this past weekend and met a board member from the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District who was also attending. And that member said that they had also paused reimbursements to their correspondence families. And that's a little bit of hearsay, but it's coming from a board member. So I just wondered if ASD is aware of any other districts that have paused reimbursements to correspondence schools within
Through the chair, thank you, Member Lessons. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of other districts that have paused reimbursements, but I didn't do a formal poll. We're all receiving the same information, and I will say that we did follow the commissioner's advice in that she urged districts to consider consulting outside counsel, which we did on this matter, and it was made clear that the judge's order was effective April 12th, and that's the date that we paused the allotments. And we are urging both publicly and formally through an amicus brief for a stay order. And our attorneys recently informed us that we would expect an outcome on a stay request either this Friday or Monday. So for our families listening, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to see that stay request granted so we could resume our allotment reimbursement program.
Thank you, Member Lessons. I'll just note that I have heard the same thing regarding the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, so I don't think it is accurate any longer to say that it is the only district. Certainly, the least is considering this course of action to ensure we're engaging in appropriate use of public funds. With that said, I think I had Member Donnelly, and then okay, so we'll do Member Donnelly, then we'll go online to President Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. My goal is to get these families paid, and I think the resolution as it appears before us now is a fair, neutral, resolution asking for one of the three possible courses of action to accomplish that goal of getting these families paid that you accurately articulated earlier. And so that's why I will be supporting it. I believe Member Holloman's comments regarding interpretation of the Constitution weren't directly relevant to this particular resolution in the particular format we're dealing with, but be that as it may, I just express I don't want to think it's appropriate to engage in a major debate over that at this time with this resolution and for because it's not a question proposed by this resolution. And so I won't do that other than say I disagree with some of those remarks.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. President Bellamy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting to support the resolution. This has been a painful experience for our families and for the board and for board members. I mean, we want to make sure that our families, our correspondence school families, are being taken care of, and that they have the funds that they need to pay for their for their resources that they are providing for their students. The commissioner's guidance was underscored, and this has already been mentioned, but she underscored, when she indicated that, there's no change, she also underscored that districts needed to check in, with their legal counsel. And we have done that. The issue is much greater than charter schools. If the district decides to just violate a court order or a court ruling, for whatever reason it is, I hearken back to Member Higgins' comments earlier, not tonight, but when we were struggling with this, is that we took oaths to uphold the law, and the judge's ruling right now, until there's a stay, is very clear. And so for us as a board to go against that would present not just problems for our our correspondence school families, but for all of our families. And so I just encourage, as painful as it is, I'm holding on to hope. And I'm glad to hear the superintendent comments relative to maybe this week we will get a stay. But we're not looking to take correspondence school money from parents. That is not true. That is not substantiated. We want to support our correspondence families. I also asked the superintendent, if we don't get a stay by the end of this week or early next week, perhaps we need to hold a town hall to explain our position. And our position is not a position of denial. It is really, we're trying to be fiscally responsible and obey the law. So I do want to thank everybody for their comments. And I hope that we can get a resolution for this. And I thank the superintendent for initiating the amicus brief in a timely manner. So I am hopeful that we will get a stay and that we will get our families through the next few months. But the bigger concern for me is really what is going to happen next year beyond the stay. Unless the stay is a year or two, we are going to have some really serious conversations to be had, and families are going to have to make some very difficult and painful choices. So I will be supporting the memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bellamy. I'll jump in just to say that I think that's precisely why this resolution is important. I think most folks expected a serious consideration of a stay of some kind. However, the length of the stay is anything but guaranteed, and emergency regulations by the State Board of Education would provide certainty for families who are looking to enroll in correspondence programs for next year. So hopefully the Board of Education takes this resolution seriously and with the weight that it deserves. With that said, and seeing no other comments, we'll proceed to vote. Ms. Sullivan.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Yes.
Member Donley,
Yes.
Can you put this down on the calendar?
Member Holloman,
Yes.
And then
President Bellamy,
yes.
Member Jacobs.
Yes. ASD memorandum number 151 passes 7 yea, 0 nay. Thank you. Our next action item is ASD memorandum number 127, goal monitoring calendar F2. Would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve ASD memorandum 127.
Second, for purposes of discussion.
Great, made by Member Holloman, seconded by Member Lessons. Member Lessons, you pulled this item. Would you care to speak to it?
Yeah, I appreciate the document. It's really a point of clarification, and that is where in the cycle, presumably cycle either the end of cycle 1 or sometime early in cycle 2, will we be discussing the 2023 AK STAR results? Because when I look at the second page of it, cycle 2, it says that we will be talking about student proficiency in grades 8 and then 3 in October and November. And I sort of think that that's when this year's AK STAR data will be released. So could we just get a little bit of, we're off cycle with the state having released the 2023 AK STAR data. So the question is really, when do we talk about that within this document?
Great question. So just to recap, it took essentially 11 months for the state to produce test scores for the most recent AK STAR for the previous year, and we're off cycle. So my understanding is I've submitted a request to the board president to discuss AK STAR during the board retreat. So that wouldn't be explicitly documented in the goal monitoring calendar, but it would be timely and allow us to set our goals in accordance with that data as our baseline. Mr. Opitz, do you have anything to add? Yeah, got it right.
Okay, that is the extent of my question.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Is there any other discussion on action item F2, ASD memorandum number 127, goal monitoring calendar? Hearing and seeing none. Is there any opposition to adopting ASD memorandum number 127? Any objection to passing that with unanimous consent? Hearing. We'll play it safe because Madam President's on the phone. We'll conduct a voice vote. Ms. Sullivan, please proceed.
Member Higgins, Member Donley,
Yes.
Member Holloman,
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
President Bellamy,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Student Representative Pack,
Yes.
ASD memorandum number 127, goal monitoring calendar passes 7 yeas, 0 nays. Our next action item F3 is ASD memorandum number 132, approval of funding allocations of FEMA capital improvement project funds. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Vice President, I move ASD memorandum 132, approval of funding allocations of FEMA capital improvement project funds.
Second.
Made by Member Holloman, second by Member Lessons. Member Lessons, I believe you pulled this item. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, one of the questions that arose when I read the memo was whether ASD expects to be changing any definitions of a facility's ability to meet current educational program requirements in the process. I mean, we're going to be assessing things, but have our standards changed in order to create this new round of assessments?
Mr. Ratliff, would you like to, oh, sorry, Mr. Fenessa?
Yes, through the president. We don't really change any of the standards associated As we do projects and special projects and build new buildings, we do update our educational specifications. However, there should be no changes to those expectations.
Okay, so the educational specifications are not changing as a part within this process.
Not as a result of this process, but they do change regularly as a result of evolving needs.
Okay. Do you have an example? I'm sorry, this sort of springing this on you.
The multi-sensory de-escalation rooms, there was a new need, a new requirement to adjust to those needs. So we adjusted our educational specifications to adapt to that requirement.
No other questions from member lessons then. Any other conversation from the board on this action item? Hearings, member Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. I had a couple of questions. The first was regarding, we are dealing with the capital project allocation. Right? Just want to make sure I'm on the right resolution.
This is memorandum number 132, approval of funding allocations for FEMA capital improvement project funds.
Okay. There's a $475,000 proposed expenditure for EW facility and educational adequacy reassessments. And I just wanted to hear some more explanation of that particular expenditure.
So as a ongoing process, we conduct a facilities condition index. We use various programs, the capital planning and assessment management system. That's an ongoing process, but it only tracks what we expect based on a building aging out, how work orders, what type of work orders are coming in, to assess the condition of the building. However, periodically, we have to go in and do a more comprehensive approach because our current system only provides a like in kind replacement of a particular system. But as systems develop and age and new systems become available, we have to update those. And that's what this assessment does. The last time we did a comprehensive facilities assessment was over 15 years ago. So we are well past due to redo that process.
And that's not part of our mandatory statutorily required 6-year plan updates each year. I always assumed that was those kind of factors were considered into our 6-year capital plan.
It is considered part of our 6-year capital plan, but the facilities index or facilities condition assessment system that we use only gives us a partial picture of that. So periodically, we do have to go back and do a comprehensive look at how the facilities are performing and meeting the needs.
So is it anticipated that this would be contractual, that we would contract out for these services, or is this a cost that would be a function that would be performed internally within the district?
Correct. This would be contracted out.
And then my other question, there's over $1 million here for the Betty Davis East Anchorage High School gym floor and bleachers replacement. How does that relate to any prior expenditures for the gym at East High that we've authorized or have been approved by the voters through bonding?
So are you referring to the previous project that fixed ventilation?
Yeah, we did a pretty major gym project there. Just recently we authorized that expenditure.
This is for the gym floor itself. And it's separate from the ventilation. The ventilation was a much higher priority. This is to replace an existing floor. It's the only rubber floor in the district that we have for main gym, and it does contain mercury. So we need to replace that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any other questions or comments on ASD Memorandum number 132? Hearing, seeing none, we can proceed to a voice vote. Ms. Sullivan.
Member Donnelly,
Yes.
Member Higgins, Member Wilson,
Yes.
Member Holloman,
Yes.
Member Lessons,
Yes.
President Bellamy,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Student Representative Pack,
Allocations of FEMA capital improvement project funds passes 7 yeas, 0 nay. Thank you. That concludes our action items for tonight. Moving on to section G, non-action items. We have items 1 through 4. Does any board member wish to discuss a non-action item tonight that will be in front of us next meeting for action? Member Higgins.
Yeah, I'll just mention briefly the community work agreement. I want to have a meeting with that committee before the approval. I don't want to delay the process, but I do want a meeting. That meeting was unfortunately canceled or stopped from going forward, but I want that meeting because I want to review this with both parties involved. I want to have an opportunity to make sure the process we're going to be following is understood, that there's any questions or issues. So my expectation is that we're going to have that meeting as soon as possible. And then based on that, I'll make whether there'll be a change or a motion for the next school board meeting with it there. But I don't want to delay the process. This is an important thing to get adopted.
Thank you, Member Higgins. As chair of that committee, I'll trust to work with Dr. Bryant and President Bellamy to coordinate that meeting. Any other comments on non-action items G1 through 4? Hearing, seeing none. Thank you. We have no additional public comment for item H, so we'll move on to superintendent comment number I. Dr. Bryant, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 updates. The first one, I want to recap some things that I shared about correspondence schools. This will be our first preview into what will be a public launch as to the district's position and next steps on this topic that's of interest to many members of the community. So just a few words and to recap the timeline. So what is the situation that we're in? So what happened is that on April 12th, a Superior Court judge ruled that 2 specific statutes related to correspondence programs were unconstitutional as they're currently written. So our viewpoint based on legal counsel is that effective April 12th, there was no legal mechanism for ASD to reimburse our correspondence school families. We came to that decision after extensive consultation with attorneys and also a suggestion from the commissioner in her statement to consult counsel on some guidance that she had provided to districts, and decided that we needed to ensure compliance with the law and find a path to support our families. So with that said, just days after the April 12th order was issued, the ASD administration submitted what's called an amicus brief, which essentially urged the court to grant a stay for its judgment. So in other words, ASD essentially told the court that we need more time so that we can support our correspondence school families during this transition at minimum, because our families depend on these allotments to fulfill the requirements of the educational program that is spelled out in their individual learning plans, which is another part, a component that was struck down when those statutes were broadly ruled unconstitutional by the judge in its current form. So tonight, as we discussed, the school board passed a resolution for additional action, which urges the State Board of Education to adopt regulations that provide for constitutional correspondence study programs as soon as possible. So these 2 actions in tandem are going to position ASD to support our families through this situation in the short term and the longer term. That is our top priority. So where are we at today? So we're still awaiting for a stay. And when I say a stay, I mean a pause in the judgment that was provided by the court. So since April 12th, both the plaintiffs and the defendants in the case submitted requests for stay. And only hours ago, I was informed that an update is likely to be provided from the court as soon as this Friday or perhaps this Monday, April 29th. If there's any change to that, I will let the community know. But as soon as that stay is granted, we will resume the allotment program and close out the school year. Now, there are some next steps that will happen subsequent to that, that ruling. The stay could end as soon as July 1, or it could be for much longer. So once we receive that information, ASD will make decisions accordingly on the best next steps to ensure that our families are supported. So tonight we pursued one of those mechanisms, which should be emergency regulation from the State Board of Education. There's another path that we didn't discuss tonight, which should be some sort of legislative fix that would allow for a constitutional path for an allotment program. But we want to pursue whatever avenues are appropriate to ensure that we support our families. That is the top priority. And I just want to close on this topic by saying that we greatly appreciate our families' patience during this time of uncertainty. This decision from the court took many of us, including ASD, by surprise. And there's a lot of complexities to this as we talk about the law and legislation and various terms that many community members are probably getting up to speed on. And for that reason, we'll be launching a website. We hope to launch it tonight, but a lot of new information came to light tonight. So we'll aim to put that live tomorrow, and it'll have the most up-to-date information and the pertinent documents that we discussed today, including the amicus brief and our messaging that we sent to correspondence principals and our next steps moving forward, so that the community can be put at ease that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I don't have any reason to believe that a stay request wouldn't be granted between Friday and Monday, but please stay tuned. We're waiting just alongside all of you because we truly hope that we can restore this program to close out the school year. We do have some major decisions to make as it relates to the long-term future of the allotment program, but again, that's grounded in the realities by the fact that the two statutes were struck down related to correspondence programming and individual learning plans. Various misinformations or misunderstandings were shared. I don't want to go into every single one, but I do want to just reiterate that the statutes that were of discussion in the ruling were the ones on allotments and the ones on individual learning plans. There were some comments made tonight around school operations and that being implicated in this. That's not the case. We're talking about the two statutes that govern those specific aspects of the allotment program. So we are continuing our programs lawfully. The one thing that we're waiting for is guidance that would allow us to continue the allotment reimbursement program. We anticipate that guidance will come in the coming days. So thank you again. And then switching gears, just a brief update on CCL. We did have the Academies of Anchorage as just a standing item. Going into the next work session, I'll be requesting from the board president a full hour at minimum dedicated specifically to the Academies of Anchorage, because we want to make sure that we provide the board ample time to review some exciting things that we're working on. The team has been working around the clock. In addition to correspondence, it's the master plan and financial plan for the academies that are the priority for this week, because we know it's complicated. We have very limited resources. The start of the new school year is coming around the corner, and we want to give the board opportunity to weigh the information and choose the path that's best for the district, given all the different variables and constraints that we have. But I think that our steering committee and our staff and our community leaders have put together a very exciting and compelling vision. And now, once we present that to the board, you can decide based on the resources what that implementation could look like, and it could look different. And we expect that, but we want you to have all that information before that decision's made going into the end of May, early June. So again, the current plan, work session should be one of the only topics for work sessions going into the next board meeting. It'll be on Academies of Anchorage. Going into tomorrow internally, we're reviewing some final loose ends on the fiscal plan and the master plan. It's coming. It's long overdue, and I look forward to that very important decision point for the school board. I think we have a path to make incredible progress towards our goal on CCL, and we look forward to sharing what our community has prepared for you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Bryan. Do we have questions for the superintendent? Hearing, seeing none, we will move on to school board and administration comments. I'll start at my left. Member Higgins, the floor is yours.
as I'm not sure what I'm going to say tonight. That's probably good for everybody. I just wanted to say, first of all, I always appreciate the people that come forward to testify, particularly when you have a large group of students and they're actively engaged. So my appreciation for that and applause. In regards to the legal decision, I didn't comment on that one. I let President Bellamy raise me as a name, but we take an oath as a board member, and that oath says we're going to comply with the Constitution. We're going to follow it, and when we get court decisions and we get actions that says this is what is required, we don't have an option. We either comply with our oath or we don't, and to me, that's not an option at all. We're always going to do that, and I think that's the right and appropriate thing to do. It's been tough this last week. I've had a number of concerns raised to me, parents, teachers kind of thing, and just in how we're handling issues, particularly after the last 2 weeks when we heard so many people talk about abuse or inappropriate conduct of how it's handled. I just want to assure the public that I am committed to making sure these things are looked at properly. I have been engaged in that process for a long time. I am not going to settle for anything less than a thorough and proper review to make sure that we're doing that correctly. We put kids at risk, we put staff at risk, we put visitors at risk if we have concerns and issues. I've heard concerns raised that people are being discouraged from being a mandatory reporter. I don't know if that's true. Allegations are free. You can do it, but when it's raised, we need to look into it. And we need to be committed to providing feedback that's appropriate to parents and to those engaged in it. And I'm concerned because of what I've seen that that's an issue and concern. I'm confident that the administration will, from the information provided, look into some of these issues, but it is something from a timing standpoint, we need to be more effective. So I just encourage people, if you've got an issue or concern, and it stops at the principal level, if they do it differently, because I get different response, different principals who do things differently, there has to be an approach to be raise it above it. And there needs to be a commitment there. And the board is ultimately responsible. If we know something's not working right and we don't do anything about it and somebody gets hurt, it's our responsibility. And that's how I take it very, very seriously. So I just want to assure you that I'm living up to that commitment. I will be pushing that in the future along those lines, and it's absolutely critical. I just want to say happy Passover. Today is the second day of Passover, and so a lot of people are off with different events the first 2 days, and so I'll at least acknowledge that in regards to it. And with that, I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Member Higgins. Member Donnelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about two things. One is there was a unanimous resolution adopted by this board and the Anchorage Assembly setting as, I think, our number 2 priority for education as funding for a new study of the district cost differential in the foundation formula for education, the state formula for education. When I previously researched this, it was under $200,000. It's a de minimis amount compared to the $1 billion education budget of the state. But it's because of the lack of doing an updated district cost differential. I think millions and millions of dollars are being misallocated under the current formula. And there was unanimous agreement by all local officials on that. And I have not seen in any of the current budget proposals the inclusion of our number 2 priority. And I'd like to call on the public to contact your legislators and express your concern that that does not appear, this very small amount of essential money to perform something that's long, long overdue to ensure educational funding fairness for our students and all students around the state. Has been passed over once again. So I'd like to call on parents out there to step up and contact their legislators about that, because it is one of this board and our community's essential formally adopted priorities. The other thing I wanted to address is 2 meetings ago, I articulated a list of ideas that to increase district accountability as incentives to state authorities to support a BSA increase to provide needed additional funding for our students. One of those suggestions was to discontinue the current policy mandating the use of Common Core, National Common Core, in Anchorage School District's curriculum choices. And that rule stems from a resolution adopted by a previous Anchorage School Board, I think in 2012. Since that time, there's been the adoption of the Alaska curriculum standards by the legislature, but we have not adopted those for the utilization in our district. We still have this National Common Core standard. And at the time, Member Holloman spoke after I did, so I didn't get a chance to respond. Member Holloman made the point that there's a lot of similarities between Common Core and the Alaska standards, and that's fair. But I will point out that some 5 years ago or so, when we were working on the adoption of math curriculum, the only reason cited in the report that rejected the use of Saxon math, which is a very popular traditional math curriculum that was used by this district back when our math scores were in the 60s percentiles rather than the 40s, which they are now, was, quote, it wasn't Common Core enough. That was the only justification for not further considering Saxon math. So it is significant that this district adopted that Common Core standard back in 2012 because it has influenced how we've adopted our curriculum since then. And I would make the argument that if Common Core requirement is not that significant and not that different than the Alaska standard, then why not adopt the Alaska standard as a step of goodwill towards those folks in decision-making capacity in Juneau? Just something that we could do to show we're willing to do something different to turn this ship around and to bring our student academic outcomes, improve our student academic outcomes.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Student Representative Pack.
Went over the bulk of my report in the beginning of the meeting, but just a couple of things. I'm going to echo Member Higgins' sentiments about the engagement of students in their testimonies, and that always makes me happy to see that students are speaking out for their issues, and just thinks that it kind of proves how dedicated they are to the change they're speaking out for. And I also wish for a swift stay regarding the correspondence schools so that parents who are patiently waiting for students' educations are not meant to sacrifice more time. On other matters, I am kind of following up on the Matsu situation that happened in the beginning of the school year. I met with the student rep Ben Kalenda over there from Matsu, and we're looking at creating maybe a network so that Alaska school board student representatives have places where we can communicate and share ideas and experiences and strengths and things. And I have an idea for the county school year regarding monitoring reports. I think as my capacity as a student representative, I'd like to open and take these monitoring reports and allow the students in our student advisory boards to present to their student governments if they have any questions on the status of our education in Anchorage. So I would like to try that this coming school year. Yeah, I'd like to pass on.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Member Wilson.
So I also wanted to recognize the students that testified tonight. They were thoughtful, articulate, and it was really nice to see that Diamond supported South. So that was awesome. I also wanted to share that our True Colors, a documentary film about Bartlett High School, will start airing tomorrow night. So April 24th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. It will be on KTUU. On April 27th from 7 to 8 p.m. it will be on KYES. April 28th from 10:30 PM to 11:30 PM, also on KYES. And on May 4th from 5:30 to 6:30 PM on KTUU again. So thank you to those stations for airing that documentary. I'm excited to see it as well. I also wanted to share that I attended a basketball, I guess it's a showcase. It was a basketball showcase at Bartlett High School. I enjoyed that because I have one athlete that was recruited from a soccer tournament here in Anchorage, and there were just a nice lineup of, I don't know, probably 8 coaches from different schools, different colleges represented, and a whole bunch of high school basketball players that participated. Coach Steve Dressel is the coach at Bartlett High School, and he has coached, gosh, for at least the 25 years that I can think of that my kids had participated in school sports. So it's just really nice that our community members, our coaches, our educators all really take that extra step to make sure that our students have the opportunities, not just here K through 12, but also for beyond their K through 12 experience to really make sure that they have any opportunity they want to and choose to be recognized for whatever their future dreams are. So thank you to Bartlett and to Coach Steve for all of those efforts. What am I missing? We have our communications meeting. Oh, community convening. I wanted to say something about that because I participated in the community convening yesterday for Academies of Anchorage, and it was really always nice to see the members of our community, our industry partners, our students, our ASD staff come together to have such a huge investment in our students and our students' futures, and really be excited about the potential to really expose them to the different careers and bring them into their industries and their partners, talking about opportunities for future internships and what they want to see out of our students as they become adults and move into industry. So really excited about that. And I know, Member Lessons, you talked earlier about the portrait of a graduate, and President Bellamy talked about the community's views on views and values or regarding what they want to see out of our students. And it was really nice to participate in that and see as much investment as there is from our community partners for our students. And also we have our May 2nd meetings coming up. Our governance meeting is at 11 a.m. Our finance meeting will be at noon, and our communications committee meeting will be at 1 p.m. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Wilson. Member Lessons, the floor is yours.
Thank you. A lot of what I'd like to say has already been said. Appreciate the students, especially who came out tonight. I think my understanding is that the site-based staffing decisions really have to be made within the constraints of flat funding and retirement trends and the loss of FTE. I think at South High School for next year is aligned with our metrics, which are determined by the resources that we have. So that's kind of my understanding of it. But I certainly appreciate the commitment they have to improving their school climate, their culture, connectedness through student government. I think those students are stellar examples of what our kids are capable of doing and becoming. So I commend each and every one of them, especially the Diamond High School student coming out. That was really extraordinary to see Diamond supporting. So I had the pleasure of going to the Gifted Mentorship reception a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Bryant. It is one of my favorite things to do, to get to talk with students, their mentors, their families, about the experiences they've had. These are students who are partnered with incredibly generous community members who take the time to bring them under their wing, to expose them to career fields that have meaning for the students and are going to help launch them in, the next chapter of their lives. So that was just so rewarding to be a part of. I appreciate the administration's work on a lot of areas right now. It seems like a busy time to be a superintendent. Maybe it's always busy. And it's also been busy as a school board member, frankly. I've been attending a new round of the Edunomics training sessions. And again, I got them to pay for my thing for free. So I've saved ASD $850 for my admission. And I think President Bellamy as well. So that's savings right there. So I appreciate that. And also spent a great deal of time this past weekend at the Alaska, the 3rd annual Science of Reading convention meeting with educators from around the state. I think there were 1,400 educators. And again, I learned a lot, came away really inspired. There are calls for reform at the state level. But the reform is already happening in our schools with teachers who are deeply concerned about the efficacy of their teaching. They want to improve their practice. They want to improve their professional skill set. And I think that the Science of Reading Symposium has been a great way over the past 3 years to really create a grassroots excitement for improving practice. So it's been a privilege to kind of be a fly on the wall, learning what our educators are learning. You already spoke to the committee meetings. And then I just wanted to say one thing we never talk about because nobody's ever pulled it are the personnel reports. But I read them every time. And every time there's somebody that I've come to know. And I'll just say that this particular report, my kid's teacher is on it. My kid's principal is on it. People make a big difference in removing them. I didn't think that was gonna happen. The deeply human role. Watch people leave. For lots of different reasons. And sometimes they're just more cute. I love it.
Thank you, Member Lessons. Member Holloman, the floor is yours.
Yes, and like everyone else, I would like to thank everyone that came to testify, and our students for talking about what matters to them. It does make me think this is that moment in the year where it would be wonderful if everybody that wasn't in the classroom could just find stuff to do and not bother anyone that actually is conducting the classroom or a library or a cafeteria or anything. Just let them finish out the school year with as little interference as possible. But unfortunately, the world intrudes, and we're not able to do that. We've had some real unfortunate things come up. I think we're being misrepresented for the amount of time and effort that our staff spends trying to keep kids safe. We've had some unfortunate incidents, and that it is something that happens. And I think everyone that's in the buildings understands the amount of work that goes into trying to keep it from happening. But there are other people in the building that have different ideas, and so those things happen. Like Member Lessons, I read the personnel report every time. I see a lot of names I'm very familiar with. And I gotta say, there is a sadness to it in that over the decades, I know some of the reasons that people left. And there are times when people have put their name on that list to get away from the Anchorage School District, or to get away from a principal, or just get away from the stress of it all, in a profession that is stressful enough if you just get to worry about the things that are your job. but become more stressful with the surrounding politics and intrusions and all those things that are going on. It does seem worse lately. It seems like there is more tension within the district itself. Teachers have reported more stress coming out of student behavior. That is a reflection, I think, of just the times in Anchorage and the things that people are going through. There are a lot of other opportunities, and I have a long list of people I know that have availed themselves of them when it just finally became too much. And it is real unfortunate when you see someone that you know is talented. We're not doing enough to protect the people that teach and students in the room for them to really thrive. And of course, we're stretched for resources to do that. But it is something that's been going on for a long time, and world events and local events, I think, have just really put more pressure on everybody. So I would hope that everybody in the buildings just takes a few minutes to realize that and try to give as much leeway as we close out the year. I mean, we're about to start our graduations, crossing over ceremonies. There's that moment that you get to see in upperclassmen, whether they were sixth graders or eighth graders or seniors, where they realize they're about to not see their friends again tomorrow. It's a realization that hits kids. A lot of times it's the last day of school when they're doing activities and they're loading up the buses, and you see their faces change when they're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm going to see you again. Most kids really do love our schools, and it's a huge part of their lives. It's a huge part of them growing up, and I hope that we are able to get the fundamentals in line so that we can let our teachers and students focus on that as they're going to school every day, along with the academics that come with it. But I want to thank everyone that works so hard every day to make each day go off. We're going to need big extra push for about 50 more days. So hope everyone hangs in there.
Thank you, Member Holman. President Bellamy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a few things I'd like to acknowledge and share. First of all, the Assembly did certify the election, so congratulations to members Jacobs, Wilson, and Higgins. Your swearing-in ceremony, I think, is on May 7th, but I will confirm that. I'd like to remind board members to please make sure that you schedule in June 14th and 15th for our retreat. And then also we are having our next joint assembly meeting on May 7th. America, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. We are hosting, it will be in our boardroom for the joint assembly. So on the 7th of June would be the assembly joint meeting, and on the 14th and 15th will be our summer retreat. I think it's a spring retreat. Since I just want to remind board, just to do a reminder that the state passed the Alaska Reads Act, and on the list of choices for school districts, there were 4 choices, I believe. I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4. Saxon Math was not one of those choices. That's not saying that districts can make other decisions, but we applied for and received a grant from DEED to implement CKLA, and that is where our priorities lie at this moment. I would like the board to, would like to inform the board that I'm working with the superintendent to prioritize and schedule multiple items, either for the retreat, for future work sessions, for extended work sessions. So after we have our meeting tomorrow, you can expect, all board members can expect at least an email from Vice President Jacobs and myself on how we're going to handle those items. I do encourage board members, every Friday you get a board connect. That is one of the primary information, ways that we distribute information, because there's just so much. I mean, 7 people having multiple questions almost every day creates a huge responsibility for the administration in terms of a response. And one of the ways that we try to save your time and minimize, and try to consolidate time, because many of you work and have other obligations, is to use Board Connect to give you information. So if you can really prioritize that, that would be great. Our reorg meeting is scheduled, I think, for the 30th, and I think that's 5 to 6. America, can you confirm?
It's actually from 6 to 7.
6 to 7. Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank Member Lessons for joining me at the Science of Reading. I didn't see her, but I heard her. I know that she was there for the Science of Reading Symposium. It really was a class act this year. From the branding to the marketing to everything was, in my opinion, top notch. The information was not just for teachers, it's for all educators. So thank you, Member Lessons, for making time in your schedule for that. I want to thank Member Holloman for his work on the AASB board. We did share with the board the resolution that we passed tonight, the proposed resolution at the time. I will send it out and share it as since we have voted on it, I will share it. I will send it out and share the actual document. I think I want to also thank the Assembly for its consideration to pass a similar resolution. And I think after our vote tonight, they will be so inclined to do so. I want to thank everybody tonight for passing the Portrait of a Graduate. For me, that is it does not just represent the vision and values of our community. It represents our path forward and what we want for every single kid. Every kid is not going to go to college. Every kid is not going to do a lot of things. But when you graduate from the Anchorage School District, you will be able, we stand behind, our commitment is that you will be able to do the things that are listed in that. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think it supports our goals and our guardrails in ways that will really lead us into the future. I want to thank the administration for the work session today. As difficult as it is for me to even think of losing my neighborhood schools, I have 3 in my area. I know that Anchorage is changing, and the way that it's changing, we've got to be responsive to it. I value community, our neighborhood schools. I mean, I do, and I think a lot of us do. But at the same time, we've got to think of how do we imagine, how do we redesign, whatever we call it, whether it's restructuring or reimagining, whatever it is, that's a conversation that we've got to have with the community, and it is going to be tough. The Edgenomics training, thank you, Member Lessons again. I think we have our 3rd and 4th one this weekend. Those are always wonderful learning opportunities for me. And so I do encourage board members to try to find time to invest in, if not that training, some other training. We're going to try to, my goal was to have some Edgenomics training at our retreat, but they're not available to do it this year. So maybe at the January one, we'll be able to have a facilitator. But I do encourage board members to do that. finally, I am looking forward to the excitement and celebrations that are before us for our seniors and for our immersion programs, for our celebrations, for whatever, all the celebrations. And so if you have not confirmed your attendance at those events, board members, I encourage you to do so with Amanda tonight before you leave. It's not just our big 8. There's probably 3 times that many events that are going on, and they each deserve to have at least a board member's presence. So I encourage you to check in with Amanda, make sure that you're on the list, and make sure that you show up for our kids. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes school board administration comments. There are written public comments on Board Connect and on our board docs for review as well. With that said, that concludes our business tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no opposition, the board meeting is adjourned at 8:37 p.m.